I'm Ashley. There are only 3 days left until my wedding. Today, James, my fiance, was hosting a small party with a few close friends, and I secretly came, thinking I was about to walk into a cozy evening where James would smile at me the way he always does. But when the door creaked open, what I saw made my heart skip a beat. On the long sofa in the middle of the room, glowing under warm golden lights, James was leaning back lazily, his shirt unbuttoned, disheveled. A girl with striking pink hair, wearing a tight dress, was perched on his lap, her glossy red lips tilted up, reaching for his in the haze of alcohol. James's half-drunk, half-dazed eyes carried a kind of blur I had never seen before. But in the very last second, he turned his head, letting her kiss brush past his cheek. James, you're partying like this. Aren't you afraid Ashley will find out? A teasing voice called from the corner, mixing into loud laughter and the sharp clinking of glasses. I froze outside the door, my fingers tightening around the strap of my bag, as if it was the only thing holding me together. My breath came uneven, and the air in the hallway felt heavy, almost swallowing me whole. It's just fun, James replied, his voice indifferent, like he was talking about a toy he'd grown tired of. So what if she finds out? He lit a cigarette, smoke curling in front of him, hiding his cold eyes. Someone weak like her can only cry at best. The whole room erupted in laughter, sharp and cutting, slicing through whatever pride I had left. James smirked, pinched the girl's cheek, and said, "Wear that ballet outfit you've been practicing in. Let them see what you've got." The girl giggled sweetly, voice dripping sugar. "But I only want to wear it for you." James laughed, but his eyes stayed flat, emotionless. "Do as I say. Don't ruin the mood." She pouted, then stood up, walking away with deliberate grace. I stood there motionless, like a ghost forgotten outside the door. Someone walked out, phone pressed to his ear, stopping short when he saw me. "Ashley, you're here?" He stammered uneasy. "James is drunk. He's been calling your name nonstop." I stepped back, my heels sliding slightly on the floor. "I'm not going in," I said quietly, so low even I could barely hear myself. "I wouldn't want to interrupt his show." He hesitated, his eyes uneasy, like I'd just broken an unspoken rule. Maybe they'd never seen me like this. Ashley, fragile. Ashley, always smiling. Ashley, who never gets angry. I knew exactly what they thought of me. In this glittering circle, I was the obedient one, the girl who kept the perfect image online, always standing by James's side with a gentle smile. I heard the whispers about him. Late-night parties, strange women, rumors I pretended not to hear. "Men will be men," my friend said. "Who doesn't fool around a little? James loves you. You're getting married soon. Think about your image together." I just found it laughable. And yet, here I was, the betrayed one, still expected to endure for the sake of appearances. The invitations I carefully designed myself, the posts about our fairy tale love I spent nights perfecting, the smiles for the camera, while James vanished into parties I wasn't invited to. I swallowed hard, steadying my voice so it wouldn't shake. "You all keep having fun. I'm leaving." "Ashley, James is just blowing off steam," someone called after me, guilt lacing their tone. I didn't turn around. "Don't follow me," I said, walking quickly toward the elevator. But just as the doors came into view, a hand suddenly grabbed my wrist. Tears were still warm and salty on my cheeks as I wiped them away, my brows furrowed tightly at the man standing in front of me. It was Mason, the notorious guy everyone whispered about, the one whose scandals clung to him like a shadow. He wore a black windbreaker, matching black pants, a cigarette loosely resting between his lips, the thin curl of smoke drifting upward like a silent provocation. His gaze on me was reckless, unguarded, as if he could see every crack beneath the perfect facade I'd been trying so hard to keep intact. In this hallway filled with the scent of expensive perfume and glittering lights, Mason looked out of place, like an ink stain on a pristine, luxurious canvas. I'd heard enough about him. Stories of wild nights, whispered scandals, chaos trailing in his wake. Instinctively, I took a small step back, my heels sliding slightly on the polished wooden floor, creating distance between me and his carelessness. "Hey, Ashley." Mason pulled the cigarette from his lips, raising a brow slightly, his deep voice laced with a mocking smile. "Ready to break a few rules for once?" The fresh scar along his jaw caught the light, sharpening the edges of his face, making his defiance stand out even more. My heart raced, not out of fear, but from something else, anger, or maybe the unsettling pull of a challenge I'd never allowed myself to face. Today, I was wearing a soft pastel blue dress, a square neckline, light makeup, the perfect image of an obedient, well-mannered girl everyone expected me to be. But behind my back, I knew they called me pathetic, weak, easy to step over. I was about to turn away when Mason smirked, leaning in just slightly, his voice dripping with mockery. "Forget it, I knew you wouldn't dare. What a shame." His words slid under my skin like a needle, pricking at the raw wound of my pride. I stopped mid-turn, then slowly faced him again, locking my gaze onto his. "Who says I wouldn't?" My voice was sharp, steady, even though inside me was a storm of doubt and anger crashing against each other. Mason tossed his car keys lazily into the air, catching them with effortless ease. "Come with me, then?" he asked, his smile dangerous and inviting all at once. I tightened my grip on my newest designer bag, straightened my back, and stepped into the elevator without looking back. Mason chuckled lowly, the sound deep and amused, then followed me in. As the elevator doors slid shut, the space suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker. Without warning, he slipped an arm around my waist, pulling me close. Heat radiated from him, carrying the smoky scent of cigarettes mixed with something else. Something raw, masculine, completely different from James. The closeness made the air heavy, my chest tightening as I drew in a deep breath to steady myself. I coughed softly, pretending composure, not used to this sudden proximity. Mason tilted his head, glancing down at me, his eyes both mocking and curious. "Too fragile," he said, his voice low, teasing. I frowned, leaning my head slightly away from the sharp smell of smoke. "That's only because your cigarette stinks," I shot back, my tone sharp, though I couldn't hide the faint tremor in my voice. Mason laughed, the sound reverberating through the tight elevator walls, and then, without warning, he leaned down, his lips brushing mine, quick, bold, and unexpected. My face burned instantly, as if the entire world had caught fire. I froze, heart pounding wildly, unsure if it was anger, shame, or something unnamed stirring inside me. But in that fleeting, breathless moment, I knew one thing for certain. I had just crossed a line, one that the old Ashley would have never dared to even approach. My love for James began when I was 19, back when his gaze was still warm, like sunlight filtering through summer leaves. Mason was the first man to ever kiss me besides James. That sudden kiss in the elevator, hot, bold, left a lingering heat on my lips, like a burn that hadn't faded yet. That feeling, dangerous, forbidden, sent my heart into chaos. When the elevator doors opened to the basement, I stepped out, my face burning, as though the whole world had tilted on its axis. The cold air down there bit into my skin through the thin layer of my pale blue silk dress. Mason's sleek black Hummer loomed in the shadows, massive and menacing, a reflection of its owner. I glanced at him, still feeling the ghost of his breath from the moment inside the elevator. He opened the car door, said nothing, just gestured for me to get in. I hesitated, then tightened my grip on my bag and climbed in. the cool leather seat chilling my skin through the thin fabric, my newest designer purse resting on my lap like silent evidence of the life I'd been trying so hard to protect. Mason started the engine, its roar slicing through the silence like a challenge. We pulled out of the city center, speeding along winding mountain roads, the car tilting around sharp curves, before finally surging toward the peak as if trying to tear through the night itself. My heart pounded wildly, caught between discomfort and exhilaration, like falling into free space without knowing where I'd land. The sensation was indescribable, a tug of war between fear and thrill, between wanting to run and wanting to face it. I gripped the seatbelt across my chest, trying to keep myself grounded as the speed swallowed me whole. Mason glanced at me, a faint flicker of amusement in his eyes. But he said nothing, his focus locked on the winding road ahead. When the car finally stopped at the summit, I could barely breathe, my legs trembling slightly as Mason stepped out, opened my door, and held out his hand to help me down. "Careful," he said, his voice low, carrying a trace of mockery. My knees felt weak, but I brushed his hand away, forcing myself to walk steadily in my heels, spine straight. Mason didn't stop me. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, watching me with a smirk playing on his lips. Before me was the Griffith Observatory, quiet under the night sky, overlooking all of Los Angeles glittering below. Thousands of city lights shimmered like a sea of fallen stars beneath my feet. Above, the vast, endless sky stretched open, the constellations sparkling like they were whispering secrets I couldn't yet understand. And somehow, all the heaviness in my chest, the pain from James, the fakeness of our so-called friends, the weight of maintaining the image I'd built, began to lift little by little. I stood there, the night breeze brushing past, making my silk dress sway softly, and for the first time in a long while, I felt something close to relief. Mason stood beside me, pulling a pack of cigarettes from his pocket. But then, as if thinking better of it, his hand tightened suddenly, crushing the pack with one decisive squeeze. He tossed it into a nearby trash bin, the metallic clang echoing in the quiet. I caught the motion, and to my own surprise, I laughed softly, a quiet, unplanned sound slipping out before I could stop it. Mason turned toward me, brows furrowing, his voice edged with irritation. "What's so funny?" He stepped closer, his hand reaching out to grip my chin, his rough fingertips pressing against my skin, warm and firm. "Ashley, when you smile like that, it makes me want to pin you down right here." His voice was low, laced with danger, sending my heart racing again. I knew who Mason was. At 16, he'd already had a string of girlfriends, a man who never let his heart stay anywhere for too long. Handsome, arrogant, magnetic. He was everything I'd spent years avoiding. But standing here now, so close, I was unsettled and yet forcing myself to look composed. "Mason, you're not sick or anything, right?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly, trying to mask the unease crawling up my spine. He laughed, leaning in, his warm breath grazing the edge of my ear. "Why? You want to give me a full-body check right now?" His grip on my chin tightened, his eyes glinting like a predator cornering its prey. "Scared now? Maybe it's a little late for that, don't you think?" His words jolted through me, fear slicing clean and sharp. My heart thudded violently, loud enough to drown out the night. I shoved him back, harder than I expected, even surprising myself. "Mason, I want to go home," I said, my voice sharp but laced with panic I couldn't hide. He let go without resistance, his tall, solid frame leaning lazily against the railing, looking almost bored, as if the entire thing were just a game. "Fine," he said, his deep voice curling into something dangerous, a sly smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Want to go home? Then walk yourself down the hill." My jaw clenched, anger boiling through me so fiercely I could almost taste blood. I turned without another word, my heels striking against the dark, narrow path, the cold wind slicing across my skin. Heard there was a serial killer who escaped a few days ago, Mason called after me, his voice slow, deliberate, dripping with lazy amusement. Rumor has it he's hiding somewhere on this mountain. I froze mid-step, my feet rooted to the ground. They say he goes after pretty girls first, rapes them, then cuts them into pieces. His voice stretched out, drawn and sinister, like he was telling a ghost story meant to scare a child. A sharp mountain wind cut through me, like blades against my skin, and the fear from Mason's twisted joke sent me spiraling, stripping away every ounce of pride I had left. I turned and ran toward him, my heels sliding across the dark trail, breath ragged, panic rising. Mason laughed deeply, the sound low and rough, echoing into the night. He spread his arms wide, pulling me tightly against his solid chest. My thoughts scrambled, my breathing uneven, when his hand slid up to the back of my neck, forcing my head back. His lips crashed into mine, fierce and unyielding. I shoved at his shoulders, trapped between resistance and surrender. I wanted to scream, but only strangled sounds came out, until I bit his lip hard, tasting the sharp metallic tang of blood. Mason froze, his gaze cooling, like a predator provoked. He wiped the smear of blood from his lip, his expression dangerous, yet strangely curious. "Ashley," he said, his voice deep, almost a warning. My eyes burned red, caught between fear and humiliation. "I want to go home," I whispered, my voice trembling, fragile like a lost child. Mason chuckled, but this time it wasn't mockery. "Go home, and what? Keep being their puppet?" He tilted his head, his sharp eyes cutting into me like glass. "Ashley, just how much are you willing to swallow?" His words sliced clean through wounds I'd buried deep. James, the man everyone praised as a prodigy, a gentleman, the perfect fiancé, but behind closed doors, he was far worse than anyone imagined. Everyone told me to endure, to stay quiet, to protect the picture-perfect image, to think about the wedding only 3 days away. No one told James to stop. No one told him to stop hurting me. Just because he had status, power, and because I was afraid of losing the stability I'd sacrificed so much for? I stood frozen there at the mountain peak, the Los Angeles lights glittering beneath my feet, the endless stars stretching above me. Why is it always me who has to bear the pain? I asked myself, my thoughts sharp, slicing through the silence inside my head. A child who lost her mother had, in truth, lost her father too. No one to lean on, no one to protect me. Do I not even have the right to cry, to fight back anymore? "Ashley," Mason called softly this time, his rough fingertips brushing away my tears. He leaned down and kissed me again, but gentler this time, softer, like a quiet promise of comfort. I heard him whisper, low enough to feel the words against my skin. "Don't cry. From now on, I'll take care of you." His voice struck me like a warm current, leaving me frozen, unsure whether to believe him or be afraid. Mason drove me back to his place, a luxury penthouse perched on the top floor in the heart of the city. The space was wide and sleek, but hollow somehow, like it carried no trace of anyone else. I stepped inside, scanning the room. No makeup, no perfume, no signs of any other woman. Mason switched off my phone, tossing it casually onto the table. "Go take a shower," he said, his tone commanding but not forceful. I nodded, stepping into the bathroom, letting the hot water wash away the chaos tangled inside me. When I came out, wrapped in a bathrobe, Mason was on the balcony, waiting. He poured 2 glasses of red wine, city lights reflecting in his dark, steady gaze. I rarely drink, but tonight, I sipped slowly, feeling the warmth spread through my body. The wine loosened something in me, and before I realized it, my fingers were tugging at Mason's robe, my lips mumbling words I couldn't quite form. My hands moved as if on their own, tracing down his chest, feeling every line of hard muscle beneath my fingertips. Mason stilled, surprised, his hand half raised to stop me, but I glared, pushing his hand away. He chuckled quietly, reclining back into the chair, his long legs stretched out, letting me do as I pleased. His body was a sculpture, tanned skin, smooth, defined muscles, abs carved deep and perfect, even in total stillness. I poked lightly at his stomach, my hand sliding lower, curiosity and boldness carrying me further than I ever thought I could go. Ashley, Mason caught my hand, his voice husky, weighted with a warning. Think carefully. Just one more inch down, and there's no turning back. I tilted my head, shifting to straddle his lap, tapping lightly against his abs, looking down at him with a smirk of defiance. What's wrong? Getting nervous? Or are you scared? I teased softly, my tone low, daring. Scared I might find something out? Mason suddenly burst into laughter, the sound unguarded and rich, not mocking, real. A genuine, unrestrained laugh from somewhere deep inside him, and it startled me enough to make my chest tighten. That sound, it was warm, unfamiliar, and it made my own heartbeat stumble. He was so handsome, it hurt to look away. I inhaled slowly, my gaze wandering down his chest, over the lines of his stomach, and lower still. Then I broke into laughter too, because seeing him flustered, seeing Mason of all people unsteady, was something I'd never imagined. In that moment, something cracked open between us, something fragile but real. And in the very next, he scooped me up effortlessly. The mattress dipped beneath us, the bedside lamp trembled faintly, and the night, at last, stopped holding its breath. When I opened my eyes, sunlight was already pouring through the curtains, warm but blinding, signaling it was nearly noon. The silence around me was so deep I could hear my own heartbeat. There was no sign of him anywhere. I lay there for a moment longer, the soft blanket tangled around me, as memories of last night crashed over me like a tide. The fierce kisses, the bold touches, and the way Mason made me forget every boundary I thought I had. Slowly, I dragged myself up, pulling the bathrobe tighter around my body, and stepped onto the balcony to breathe in the fresh air. From above, I glanced down at the garden below. Mason was there, shirtless, rinsing down a heavy motorcycle. The midday sun spilled across his tanned skin, highlighting every defined muscle, each movement fluid and sculpted like a work of art. Water sprayed from the high-pressure hose, scattering into droplets that caught the light, forming a faint rainbow. He wore only low-slung jeans, revealing the hard lines of his waist and abdomen, radiating a wild, effortless sensuality. I stood there frozen, unable to look away, as if caught in a quiet trance. Memories from last night surfaced again, those moments when Mason proved that being a bad boy wasn't just an image. His voice echoed in my head, teasing, Ashley, is it cute? Do you like it? My cheeks burned, my heart pounding hard in my chest. Almost as if he sensed my gaze, Mason turned off the water and looked up. Our eyes locked, and my face felt like it was on fire. My instinct was to retreat inside, but he called out, his voice deep and steady. Ashley. He leaned casually against the bike, running a hand through his wet hair, slicking it back to reveal every sharp angle of his face. Under the sunlight, he looked at me with a relaxed, confident smile, tinged with a bit of triumph, like someone savoring a win. That smugness made me want to grit my teeth. But beneath it, something sweet and dizzying rushed up unexpectedly, leaving me unsettled. I shot him a glare before turning on my heel, stepping back into the apartment, trying to hide the storm inside my chest. After changing, I came downstairs to find Mason already waiting at the dining table. A full breakfast was laid out, sunny-side-up eggs, toast, and freshly brewed coffee, everything prepared exactly to my taste. Hungry? Eat first, he said, standing to pull out a chair for me, the gesture natural yet layered with intention. I sat down, surprised by his thoughtfulness, but a weight pressed down on me. In just 3 days, I was supposed to marry James. I worked for his family's company, and for so long, this marriage had been my lifeline, the stability I believed I needed. If I walked away, I'd have to start from scratch and lose everything I'd built. Not to your taste? Mason asked, when he noticed me absent-mindedly poking at the toast instead of eating. His tone was soft, but his sharp gaze searched me, as if trying to read the thoughts I was trying to hide. Let me take you out instead. Mason, I interrupted, my voice quiet but heavy. The wedding is in 3 days. His expression barely shifted, but I saw his eyes darken slightly. You still want to go back? He asked, his voice deep, like he was holding something back. Ashley, do you really love him that much? I laughed, but it came out bitter, almost mocking myself. Love? I shook my head, my eyes red but forcing a small smile. Maybe. Once. At the start, we both meant it. We both wanted it. How could there not have been feelings once? But later, when people change, when they grow bored, when they find someone else, how could I not notice? Mason leaned back in his chair, reaching instinctively for his cigarettes, then paused when he remembered the crushed pack was gone. He shut his eyes briefly, inhaling deeply before speaking in a low, rough voice. So what happens after 3 days, Ashley? You want me to just stand there and watch you walk down the aisle to another man? Pretend like all of this? His hand gestured vaguely between us. Was nothing but a dream. My chest tightened as I stared at him. Mason! You're saying you wouldn't be happy? I asked, my voice quiet, shaky, unsure if I even wanted his answer. He gave a soft laugh, his gaze fixed on me, as though memorizing every line of my face. Ashley, he murmured, of course I'm happy. I forced a careless shrug, trying to sound light, though my voice wavered. Then isn't this a win-win? We both got what we wanted. Mason repeated my words slowly. A win-win. His voice dropped lower, his gaze locked on mine, and that familiar smirk returned, arrogant but charged with emotion. Ashley, whatever you say, as long as you're happy, that's all that matters. But in his eyes, I caught a fleeting shadow, a quiet ache he didn't try to hide fast enough, as if he was fighting his own war inside. I lowered my eyes to the untouched food on my plate, my thoughts unraveling into chaos, caught between James, who had betrayed me, and Mason, who made me feel like I was finally alive. But then again, maybe everyone changes eventually. That night, Mason drove me through the streets of Los Angeles on his sleek black motorcycle. We sped past the glowing city, neon lights streaking by like falling stars. Hidden under the helmet, I didn't have to care about people's stares, about the image of the perfect girl I had worn for so many years. The cold wind lashed against my face, but my heart felt like it was on fire. I threw my arms out, screaming into the night, my voice louder than the roar of the engine, unconcerned with the flawless facade I once tried so hard to keep. Ashley Wilson, the girl trapped inside a glass cage of her own making, the one who always bowed her head to advice about enduring, was tearing through the shell that had imprisoned her. For the first time, I felt free, untouchable, like the world couldn't reach me anymore. But I didn't know then, while I was losing myself in those wild, fleeting hours, James, my fiancé who no longer loved me, was restless inside the luxurious villa, prepared for our married life, pacing and unraveling, because I had been gone all day and night. James picked up his phone, calling me one last time, but all he got was the hollow, endless tone on the other end. He stood up, his dress shirt rumpled, leaving behind the apartment we once called our future home. Late that night, he met his friends at a bar, the glass of liquor glinting beneath the hazy lights. Sitting among his group, James swirled the drink in his hand, his eyes distant, lacking the spark of excitement. James, did Ashley fight with you after you got home last night? One friend, lounging lazily across the sofa, asked curiously. James glanced at him, a smug smile curving his lips. She wouldn't dare. The guy laughed loudly. Good. I thought Ashley saw you holding that ballet girl yesterday and went home crying, ready to blow up on you. James froze. The glass halted midair. Ashley was there yesterday? He asked, his voice dropping lower. Yeah, the friend nodded. I stepped outside to take a call and saw her standing there. Pretty sure she'd been crying. James slowly set his glass down, his face loosening with relief. He must have thought I was sulking out of jealousy. That's why I disappeared, turned off my phone, vanished the whole day. His mood suddenly eased, and he let himself sink deeper into Chloe's presence. Her perfume, sweet, seductive, wrapped around him, making it hard to resist. He pulled Chloe into his arms, pinching her cheek gently, his tone soft but lazy. Tonight's the last time. Let's make it a good one. Chloe raised a brow, pretending to pout. Why the last time? James chuckled softly. Because the day after tomorrow, I'm getting married. Her head tilted slightly, her gaze flickering with calculation. So what if you're married? You're saying we won't see each other after that? James laughed, holding Chloe close as he stood, turning to face the entire crowded room. Everyone listen up, he said, his voice casual, but carrying a strange note of seriousness. From now on, there will only be one woman for me. My wife. His friends erupted into laughter, but there was something in James's eyes, a flash of something sharp, cold, that made Chloe pause for just a moment, even as she kept smiling, fingers tightening around her glass. I knew all of this because Mason sent me the video, and when I watched it, I didn't even feel the sharp, stabbing pain anymore. I simply handed the phone back to Mason. While James was still drowning himself in messy games with Chloe, Mason took me to join a small race. All the riders there had their girlfriends sitting behind them that day, and Mason, of course, had me. Mason, breaking your rule this time? Bringing your girlfriend along? One of the guys teased. I froze for a moment, instinctively wanting to explain, but Mason shot me a quick glance before pulling me close with his hand. Don't mess with her. He ignored them after that, grabbing a helmet and placing it on me himself. The speed might get a little crazy later. If you're scared, just tell me to stop. I'm not scared, I said. Mason tilted his head up at me, half joking, half serious. Then if you are, just hold on to me tight. I told you, I'm not scared. I rode one lap earlier and didn't make a sound, did I? Mason just smiled faintly, saying nothing more. But when the race began, I realized the earlier lap was nothing but a warm-up. The speed surged, the sharp turns had the bike tilting dangerously, and the insane drifting made my heart pound like it was about to burst. I screamed, instinctively wrapping my arms tightly around Mason's waist. Ashley, scared! He shouted over the roaring wind, his voice cutting through the night. I squeezed my eyes shut and yelled back, Not scared! Even though my legs trembled violently. Mason's laughter rang out, wild, unrestrained, free, merging with the engine's roar. Ashley, hold me tighter, even tighter, he shouted, and I obeyed, gripping him closer, feeling every hard line of his body under my arms. The bike flew across the finish line at top speed, and unsurprisingly, Mason took first place. When he killed the engine and lifted me off, my legs went weak beneath me, barely holding me up. He caught me, removed my helmet, his eyes burning brightly under the blanket of stars. It felt like every light around us had gone out, leaving only the glimmering constellations above. Mason leaned down, his lips warm, his breath charged with raw intensity. Ashley, let's run away together, he whispered, his voice rough, strained. Do you dare? The scar on his jaw glimmered faintly under the moonlight, making him look even more untamed, magnetic. And I saw something in his eyes, maybe love, and it sent a tremor through my chest. For a fleeting second, I wanted to nod, to throw everything away, James, the wedding, the glass cage I'd built for myself. But reality reached out like a cold hand and pulled me back. I didn't answer. Instead, I rose on my toes, kissed him softly, and whispered, Mason, I want you. Beneath the stars, on the quiet mountaintop, he opened the backseat door, and for a moment, we forgot the weight of the world outside. Our breaths tangled, the soft tick of the dashboard clock marking each second we crossed another line. He asked quietly, "Are you okay?" And I nodded, just once, but enough for the night to understand. The soft glow from the control panel brushed my eyelids, the pine-scented breeze slipped into my hair, and the wall between us cracked open beneath his steady, protective embrace. His hand stayed gently at the back of my neck, a quiet promise lingering in his touch. I'm here. Before this, we were barely acquaintances in Los Angeles, passing each other at glittering parties, faces in the crowd. But in just 2 days, he had given me a strange sense of safety, even with his untrustworthy reputation, even though everyone knew him as a reckless heartbreaker. I closed my eyes, letting instinct guide me, giving myself entirely to that moment. When the quiet finally settled, I wrapped myself in his jacket, curling up in his lap. We sat in silence, exchanging short, lingering kisses, holding on to the night as though we could stop dawn from coming, desperate to stretch this fragile moment before everything returned to where it began. On the last day, I stayed at Mason's penthouse. When I woke, it was already 2 in the afternoon. I took a long shower, letting the hot water wash away my exhaustion, but it couldn't cleanse the storm in my mind. Standing at the sink, towel drying my hair, Mason quietly pushed the door open. He didn't say anything, just took the dryer from my hand, his touch gentle but deliberate. In the mirror, I caught sight of the worn bracelet on his left wrist, the faintly faded engraving of his name. That bracelet. How long have you worn it? I asked softly, my voice unsteady. Almost 4 years, he replied, eyes never leaving mine. Who gave it to you? I asked again, even though I already had an idea. Mason let out a small chuckle. Designed it myself. My lucky charm. I used to have one like that, but I must have lost it somewhere, I said quietly, my vision blurring slightly. Ashley? He murmured, pressing his forehead against mine, his voice low, like a confession. You're going back, aren't you? I couldn't bring myself to answer, only reached up and brushed my fingers lightly against the scar on his jaw. This scar, how did you get it? He shrugged casually. Happens when you race. Crashes are normal. Be more careful, I said softly, forcing a small smile. It'd be a shame if someone as handsome as you ended up covered in scars. He raised a brow, teasing, Just my face that's handsome? I smiled faintly. Your body too, especially in bed. You surprise me every single time. Mason frowned slightly, like the joke didn't sit well with him. Ashley, he said, his voice lower, serious, I have never loved anyone before you. I froze, the weight of his words catching me off guard. Why? I asked, my heartbeat thundering. Too loud, he muttered, brushing away a stray drop of water from my cheek. Ashley, tomorrow. I'll be outside the wedding venue. Don't worry, I won't cause a scene. If you don't come, I won't look for you. I wanted to tell him not to do it, to warn him that people already judged him, that one reckless act could ruin his name entirely. But the words stuck in my throat. I was engaged to James. Everyone knew I was going to marry him. Ashley, we only live once, Mason said, his gaze bright, steady. I just hope you choose to live free, to live for yourself. I lowered my head, letting the tears fall silently. When James found out I had returned to the villa, he rushed back, looking exhausted and worn out. The smell of alcohol clung heavily to him. His shirt wrinkled, yet he forced a rare, gentle smile. He took off his suit jacket and lazily tossed it onto the shoe rack by the door, the gesture casual but deliberate. Ashley, he called softly, his deep voice steady as he walked closer, taking my hand. Honey, tomorrow is our wedding. From now on, let's live well together, okay? I looked at the man in front of me, tracing every feature of his face, the eyes I once adored, the smile that once made me believe in a future filled with happiness. I once loved him, 4 years ago, when I was 19, naive and full of hope. I gently but firmly pulled my hand away. Go shower and get some rest, I said evenly. And you? James asked, his gaze probing. I need to rest too, I replied, standing and walking toward the door. I'll stay at my father's house tonight. He nodded, putting on the act of a considerate fiancé, personally walking me to the car. Through the window, I saw him standing there in the dark, quietly watching the car drive away, his eyes carrying what seemed like tenderness. But I wondered, was that tenderness for me, or for the image he wanted to protect? My phone suddenly buzzed, snapping me out of my thoughts. It was a friend request on WeChat from an unknown account. I accepted it, and immediately, several photos and videos came flooding in, followed by a message from a woman. Ashley, I wasn't going to bother you, she wrote, but James was cruel. I was only in it for the money, but now I've been fired, my reputation destroyed, left with nothing. Please believe me, after you marry him, he won't stop. I opened the photos, but after a single glance, my hand trembled as I shut them off. They were filthy, revolting, slicing through what little dignity I had left. In James's world, money could buy everything: women, emotions, silence. So should I thank him? Thank him because even if he no longer loved me, he still respected me enough not to treat me like he treated them? I gripped my phone tightly, tears spilling silently, but I didn't sob. I just felt exhausted. Exhausted from holding on to something so hollow, so undeserving. On the day of the wedding, I woke up early, just as the pale light of dawn seeped through the window. In the quiet of my room, I had already made my decision. I opened the safe and pulled out several folders. My mother's inheritance. My mother, a graceful, intelligent woman, had passed away when I was young, leaving behind shares in her company and a collection of priceless jewelry. I kept only her favorite necklace, a delicate silver chain that glimmered softly like the memory of her smile. The rest, I decided to sell. After my mother's death, my father remarried. He had always wanted control over that inheritance, but I guarded it fiercely. It was the last trace of her I had left. I had lived under his roof, once longing for his love. But now I understood. He saw me as nothing more than a tool, an ATM he could use whenever he needed money. I withdrew $200,000 and handed it to him, whispering to myself, I don't owe you anything anymore. Whatever chaos came after, I no longer cared. Unaware of my plan, my father smiled with satisfaction. You're finally getting married. You finally learned to be sensible, he said, his eyes full of calculation. My stepmother beamed, her voice sweet as she reminded me to help your little brother, to keep James's heart, to secure my place. Once you're married, don't be so willful, she advised. With his support, life will be easier for you. My father nodded in agreement, looking at me with pride for the first time. But I knew the truth. In his eyes, I was never a daughter. I was property, a bargaining chip. Not a human being who could hurt, bleed, or break. 30 minutes before the wedding was set to begin, I slipped the shawl off my shoulders. The wedding dress was stunning, intricate, revealing my bare shoulders and the entire expanse of my back. The makeup artist smiled softly and said, Ashley, let me cover up these marks for you. She pointed at the faint love bites on my neck. You and James must be so in love. I shook my head. No need. Leave them. She adjusted my veil and the long train, placing the bouquet into my hands. I held the flowers, stood up slowly, the delicate silver necklace my mother had left me, lying cold against my collarbone, like a touch from the past. And suddenly, the haze clouding my heart seemed to clear, as if an invisible hand had brushed it away. A beam of sunlight slipped through the gap, striking straight into me. I knew, in this moment, everything was about to change. As I stepped outside, my phone buzzed faintly in my purse. It was a message from Mason. "Ashley, I'm waiting for you." I didn't reply, slipping the phone back into my bag, and walked out of the dressing room. From a distance, I saw James. He saw me too. There was a flash of awe and excitement in his eyes. The groom, dressed in a pristine white suit, handsome and full of pride. Today, he radiated smug triumph. I stopped for a moment, suddenly pulled back into the memory of the year we first fell in love. It was the day my mother passed away. James went with me to the church. I had designed a bracelet myself, carefully engraving his name into it, and I was so happy, eager to gift it to him. But he didn't seem to like it. He thought it was cheap, unworthy of his outfits, not fitting his image. He barely glanced at it and never intended to wear it. I pretended I wasn't hurt, but that night, standing before the prayer board, I secretly scribbled one single line. "Please, just one person who will love me sincerely and never leave me." That bracelet, I left it pinned among the prayers at the church. To this day, I still remember exactly what I wished for. Someone who will love me sincerely and never leave my side. My vision blurred, James's face in front of me fading at the edges. I had loved him, truly. That love, once upon a time, had been real. So no, I don't regret it. But now I have finally let him go. People who've never had a rebellious phase, when they finally decide to break free, it's terrifying. James clutched his groom's bouquet, stepping closer to me. The smile on his face froze instantly. He had seen the love bites on my neck. His expression twisted, so much so that the bouquet nearly slipped from his hands. "Ashley, what is this?" His voice was hoarse, his gaze burning with restrained fury. I couldn't help but laugh softly. "I just tried something new?" "Tried something new?" James repeated, his voice low, before suddenly slamming the bouquet violently onto the ground. The surrounding chatter died instantly into silence. Friends, family, everyone turned their heads. I raised my brows slightly, a faint smile curling my lips. "You get to do whatever you want, but I can't?" I tilted my head, my tone steady and cold. "I tried once. Conclusion? What you've given me is dull." James growled under his breath. "Ashley." I slowly knelt down, gently placing the bouquet in my hands onto the ground, then looked up at him with an even deeper smile. "James, I'm not getting married." For a second, there was only a low ringing in my ears, and then suddenly, every sound came crashing back, painfully sharp. The clatter of metal against a pillar, someone gasping audibly, my stepmother's breath catching in her throat. I turned away. My father stood frozen like stone before his voice broke, sharp and trembling with rage. "Ashley, stop right there!" I didn't look back. The elaborate gown gathered in my hands, the heels already swapped secretly for soft sneakers. I started running, across the perfectly trimmed emerald green lawn, through arch after arch of blooming roses. And finally, as I crossed the grand gate, I stopped for a brief moment, turning back. The chaos behind me, the shouting, the gasps, the collapsing facade, suddenly seemed like a strange, distant world I no longer belonged to. Because the moment I stepped past that gate, I knew one thing with absolute certainty: I would never come back. I stood at the edge of the aisle, my white wedding dress flowing like waves, the soft morning sunlight scattering gold across every fold of fabric. In the distance, Mason was waiting for me. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit, leaning casually against his large motorcycle. I stopped there, standing beneath the sunlight, my eyes fixed on him. Mason saw me too, and immediately he straightened, his broad shoulders tensing, as though in that moment the entire world disappeared, and I was the only thing in his sight. The reckless, untamed man I once thought I knew now pressed his lips together, his usually fearless gaze betraying a rare, fragile tension. But in those eyes, I saw something I would never forget: the wild rush of uncontainable joy, the stunned disbelief, and beneath it, a tenderness so deep, deep, so aching, as if he was terrified I might vanish at any second. Ashley, he called softly, his deep voice carrying, his strides long and deliberate, and within moments he was standing right in front of me. My wedding dress rippled around me, tracing invisible circles in the air, as if sweeping away the past. By the time James came rushing after me, his face flushed red with anger, I was already seated on the back of Mason's motorcycle. I turned once, smiling faintly, raising my hand to wave goodbye. Not to James, but to the years I had spent bound and silent. The roar of the engine thundered through the courtyard, drowning out James's shouts. Mason twisted the throttle, and we shot forward, leaving him, leaving the expectations, leaving the world behind. Ahead of us, there was only wind and freedom. Mason and I wandered from place to place after that. No wedding, no rituals, but it felt like an endless honeymoon. We traveled across the most breathtaking corners of the world, the dazzling turquoise waters of Santorini, the flower-laden streets of Tuscany, the misty peaks of Patagonia. With every place we touched, I felt pieces of myself breaking free, the old cocoon shattering to reveal someone I had always wanted to be. And Ashley unafraid, unbound by anyone's gaze or judgment. A year later, I brought Mason to the small church I had visited 4 years ago, the same place where I once pinned a prayer card, dreaming of a happy life with James. Inside the quiet chapel, while Mason bowed his head in silent prayer, I walked toward the old prayer board, where time-worn cards clung like whispers from the past. My card was still there, the trembling handwriting of a 19-year-old girl begging for eternal love. But right beside it, I noticed another card, bold and unyielding, the handwriting unmistakably Mason's. It read, "Ashley, could you notice me just a little sooner?" My chest tightened, and tears slipped down my cheeks as I clutched both cards in my hands, holding on to both the past and the present. And suddenly, I remembered. The bracelet Mason wore. The one he never took off. It was my bracelet. The one I had left here years ago. The one James had dismissed, yet Mason had carried like a treasure. "Ashley!" Mason's voice rang out, pulling me back from the swirl of memories. I turned to see him standing there, his white shirt perfectly fitted across his solid frame, black trousers sharp and sleek, breathtaking under the sunlight. When our eyes met, a gentle smile spread across his face, soft and unguarded, like sunlight breaking through dark clouds, and I felt something inside me dissolve. I laughed through my tears, lifting my hand high and waving. "Mason, I see you!" I called, my voice cracking but brimming with life. I walked toward him, the wind threading through my hair, carrying the weight of freedom with it. No more glass cage, no more James. I had finally found myself, not through a wedding, not through a man, but through the roads we traveled, the skies I touched, and the gaze of the one who gave me the courage to live unapologetically. We stood there, in that small church where the past and present met, and I knew that whatever the future held, I had chosen my own path. Freedom is not running away. It's standing still, facing your heart with unshaken clarity, and stepping forward without regret.